Trick or treat! Welcome to your menopause, your way, where I teach you everything you need to know in order to make the rest of your life the best of your life. I'm Menopause Taylor, your fearless leader, and today I'm trick-or-treating, even though it isn't Halloween. I sure do like costumes. And I must say that I didn't understand the true meaning of the trick-or-treat phrase until I was an adult. As a kid, I thought trick-or-treat meant that the people whose houses you approached would put either a trick or a treat into your bag. And I always felt so honored and appreciative that I never received anything but treats. I would peer into my bag as soon as someone dropped something into it just to see if it was a trick or a treat. And when my brothers and I got home, we always dumped all our goodies onto the floor in individual piles. That's when the big trading session began. I don't think I ever recall seeing tricks in their bags either, but I just assumed we were good kids and that all the adults chose to give us treats rather than tricks. And it wasn't until I was in college that someone told me that trick-or-treat didn't mean what I thought it meant. I was appalled. They told me that it meant that either the adult gives you a treat or you play a trick on them. Play a trick on someone, on an adult? Like a mean trick? Who would do something like that? To me, that constituted bribery. And then I realized that I am so naive that I endured my entire childhood never realizing that trick-or-treat didn't mean that adults gave you a trick or a treat, and instead, it meant that you either get a treat or you give them a trick. To this day, I think about my misunderstanding from time to time, mostly when real life deals out tricks or treats. And I still think there's something a bit twisted about the whole thing, but that's why I'm dressed in a Halloween costume. I'm supposed to be dressed as a drug rep. My name is Pushy. Conveniently, I'll also be talking about tricks or treats. And the tricks or treats that I'll be discussing are this brain and this heart. So this is video number 278, and it is part of a huge unit on Alzheimer's that we started 42 videos ago. I've already taught you everything about how your brain functions, how Alzheimer's interferes with your brain functions, and how to prevent Alzheimer's. Last week, I presented the non-hormonal medication options for treating Alzheimer's, and today we're going to continue in that vein. But even if you have my book, you'll need to watch this video for today's lessons. It's not a standalone topic in either book, first edition or the second edition. And if you're at high risk or even moderate risk for a heart attack or Alzheimer's, you definitely need to watch this video. So in last week's video, I presented stimulant medications, memory and attention enhancers, antidepressants, herbs, recreational drugs, and cognitive stimulation therapy as the categories of medications for treating Alzheimer's. I presented those options as fantasy drugs simply because not a single one of them can actually prevent or treat Alzheimer's. But today's topic warranted a video dedicated solely to it. One of the big lessons of this education is learning how to use logic to connect the dots on things. And if you've been a student here at Menopause University for a while, you're probably seeing how logic is a very powerful tool. I'm always telling you to watch my videos in order, and today you're going to get a taste of why that's so important. Way back in video 245 on how to know if you're at risk for Alzheimer's disease, I gave you the long list of risk factors for Alzheimer's. Here it is again. The fact is that all of the risk factors for a heart attack are also risk factors for Alzheimer's. So, when I failed to present medications for a heart attack last week, you might have wondered why. You see, when you learn things in a logical order and pay close attention, it induces you to ask questions. The education makes sense. So you get to the point of expecting everything to make sense. And it just doesn't make sense for me to omit non-hormonal medications that can prevent a heart attack as an option for preventing or treating Alzheimer's if the two diseases share so many of the same risk factors. Does it? So, was that a trick? Or was it a treat? If you caught the oversight, brava for you. And if you didn't, that's okay too. Because today I will address the main categories of non-hormonal medications for preventing a heart attack as they pertain to preventing or treating Alzheimer's. They are the statins and the NSAIDs, or NSAIDs, the two things that I push as a drug rep. We will focus solely on the effect of statin drugs and NSAIDs on your brain. And we'll start with the statins. I'm in the mood for a quiz question. Aren't you? Here it is. Which of the following is true with regard to the effect of statin drugs on your brain and your risk of Alzheimer's? A, the statins have the same beneficial effect on your brain as they do on your heart. They decrease your risk of Alzheimer's. B, the statins have a detrimental effect on your brain as opposed to your heart. They increase your risk of Alzheimer's. C, the statins are beneficial to both your brain and your heart by decreasing your risk of diabetes type 2. D, the statins can be detrimental to both your brain and your heart by increasing your risk of diabetes type 2. E, the statins are beneficial to both your brain and your heart by decreasing the production of cholesterol in your body. F, the statins are detrimental to your brain but beneficial to your heart by decreasing the production of cholesterol in your body. G, the statins are beneficial to your brain by enhancing memory. H, the statins are detrimental to your brain by depressing memory. I, A, C, E, and G above. J, B, D, F, and H above. Was that just completely illogical? Did you use some of the logic you've already learned to choose an answer? Did you struggle a bit? Did some of the options make you cock your head and ponder the possibilities? See, this is what I love about education. There are always so many different things to consider. Well, here's the answer in bold. So now you know that although the statins have a beneficial effect on your risk for heart attack, they have a detrimental effect on your risk for Alzheimer's because they decrease cholesterol production in your body, they can depress your memory, and they can increase your risk of diabetes type 2. So let's address these things properly. In the unit on heart attack, which encompassed videos 160 through 185, I gave you an entire education on what constitutes a heart attack, what causes a heart attack, the risk factors for a heart attack, and how to prevent a heart attack, just like I'm doing here in this Alzheimer's unit. Video Video 181 was specifically on the non-hormonal medications for preventing a heart attack, and I presented the statins as one category of your options. There are lots of statins these days. Here's the whole big list of them. Lipitor, Lescal, Mevacor or Altacor, Livalo, Pravachol, Zocor, Vytorin, Crestor. And they are used very liberally by patients who have high cholesterol, primarily to lower their risk of heart attack. In fact, the statins are some of the most widely used drugs of all, along with antidepressants. Back in video 162, I taught you that your body makes cholesterol. So it's not like cholesterol is a bad thing in general. Most people start taking a statin if their cholesterol is higher than desirable, or if they can't lower it with diet and lifestyle measures. Some take it if they have a family history of heart attacks. And statins work in one of two ways. First, they stop the production of cholesterol in your body. And second, they help you break down and absorb some of the lipid buildup in your heart arteries. As a result, statins lower your total cholesterol, lower your lousy LDL, lower your triglycerides, raise your good HDL, and stabilize the lipid buildup in your arteries so that it doesn't get worse. But everything I've said to you thus far pertains to your heart. What about your brain? Would it shock you to learn that the very statins that prevent heart attack can cause Alzheimer's? Let's go back to basic brain anatomy. This is what I taught you in video 237. Remember this? This is our neuron board. It shows you how neurons connect one to the next and send information from one neuron to the next neuron via this neurotransmitter. Your neurons constitute your gray matter. But do you remember this? The white stuff? This is myelin. And your myelin constitutes your white matter. And myelin acts as an insulator that enables the information to transfer even faster. The more myelin you have, the bigger, heavier, and smarter your brain is. But you also learned that myelin is fat. And you learned that your brain loves fat. Your brain itself is 25% fat. And when it comes to fat in your brain, the more the better. So if statins function to decrease the fat in your entire body, it means that they also decrease the fat in your brain. But you don't want anything to decrease the fat in your brain. Less fat in your brain is one of the steps of brain breakdown that causes Alzheimer's. Remember our brain buildup and breakdown chart? Step 3 is all about myelin and its insulating properties. And statins interfere with that step. Well, if you interfere with step 3 of brain buildup, you impair all steps beyond step 3. So you end up with this. So reflect back on the first of the two ways that the statins lower your cholesterol. They stop the production of cholesterol in your body. The problem is that the effect of stopping cholesterol production may be good for your heart, but it is a disaster for your brain. So you treat your heart, but you trick your brain. Ironically, the pharmaceutical companies that make statins advertise them by saying that they interfere with cholesterol production in your brain as well as in your heart. And they say that as if it's an added treat. They want you to think that a fat brain is a bad thing. But it isn't. It's a trick. You know, a real drug rep wouldn't be telling you this. But since I'm a fake drug rep, I will. And most patients are ignorant to the fact that while that is a true statement, low brain cholesterol is detrimental to your brain and increases your risk for Alzheimer's. Advertising is tricky. Oftentimes it's just a big fat lie. Other times it's distorted. And still other times it's the truth, but a lie by omission. A lie by omission is when you conveniently just leave out a piece of information that changes everything. That's the case with statin advertising. Saying that statins interfere with cholesterol production in your brain is true. But if they wanted to be completely honest, they would then add, but that's not a benefit of the drug. It's a risk and a detriment of the drug. And they should list increased risk of Alzheimer's as one of the risks of taking the drug. Drugs should not be Halloween trick-or-treat objects. Then consider the second way in which statins lower your cholesterol. They help you break down and absorb some of the lipid buildup in your heart arteries as well as in your brain. So in addition to interfering with production of cholesterol in the first place, they also destroy the cholesterol you already have in your body. And once again, while that may be good for your heart, it is disastrous for your brain. It's yet another trick rather than a treat. And if that weren't enough, in addition to these direct effects that statins have on your cholesterol, they also have some indirect effects that ultimately damage your brain health even more. They decrease the number of low-density lipoprotein particles, LDL particles, that I taught you about in the heart attack unit. Well, LDL carries cholesterol. So this amounts to destroying the vehicle for carrying cholesterol to your brain. In other words, even if the statin didn't lower your cholesterol that much, and even if you still had cholesterol in your body, it would have no way to get to your brain. And that's not all. Because LDL particles also carry antioxidants and fatty acids, statins also deprive your brain of the antioxidants I taught you about in video 264 and the omega-3s I taught you about in video 265. And to add one more death knell to your poor brain, statins also paralyze the ability of your cells to make coenzyme Q10. And you learned in video 271 that coenzyme Q10 is important for your brain function too. So, trick or treat, statins will save your heart at the expense of sacrificing your brain. If you look at the list of side effects of statins, there are 3 different categories of them. The mild common side effects include headache, difficulty sleeping, skin flushing, muscle aches, tenderness or weakness, drowsiness, dizziness, nausea or vomiting, abdominal cramps, bloating or gas, diarrhea, constipation, and skin rash. The less common side effects include memory loss, mental confusion, high blood sugar, diabetes type 2, and nerve damage. And the really uncommon serious side effects that constitute risks of using a statin include muscle inflammation and liver damage. But I want you to focus on the list of less common side effects with particular attention to memory loss, mental confusion, high blood sugar, and diabetes type 2. If the short-term side effect is memory loss, what do you think is going to happen over the long term? This is the same thing I explained about menopause when you first lose your estrogen. In both situations, your brain is quite plainly telling you that it is in trouble. The same thing goes for the second item on the list, mental confusion. Isn't that what Alzheimer's patients have? Might it be that the early side effect of mental confusion becomes later Alzheimer's? Could that be a trick too? And notice that the next two items have to do with blood sugar and diabetes type 2. I gave you an entire video on the connection between diabetes and Alzheimer's. It was video number 266, and you learned that the connection between Alzheimer's and diabetes type 2 is so strong that some people refer to Alzheimer's as diabetes type 3. Ladies, this is huge. It is yet another trick. As I've told you so many times in the past, everything, absolutely everything is about trade-offs. Everything has some benefits and everything has some risks. Your job is to weigh the benefits against the risks and do what's best for you. Understanding things like the differences and consequences of the effects of statins on your heart versus your brain is critical. Which do you value more? Which one poses the greatest risk for you? And what are you going to do to offset the detriments to your brain if you do need a statin for your heart? You know, everyone talks about wanting a longer lifespan, and that's fine. But I think it's more important to have a longer health span. Save your heart, but don't sacrifice your brain in doing so. This is extra important given the fact that most people who start a statin drug will likely take it for the rest of their lives. So statins give you a healthy heart and a battered brain. That is the bottom line on statins. Now, there's the other category of non-hormonal medication options to consider for preventing Alzheimer's. In the unit on heart attack, you learned that aspirin can lower your risk of a heart attack, and it does that by thinning your blood just a bit. Aspirin falls into the category of medications called non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, or NSAID, pronounced NSAIDs. NSAIDs include all the medications you think of taking when you have a headache. Some of the most common ones are aspirin itself, ibuprofen, which is Motrin and Advil, naproxen, which includes Aleve, Anaprox, Naprosyn, and Naprolin. And the question is, if aspirin can decrease your risk of a heart attack, can it decrease your risk of Alzheimer's? And the answer is, dun 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 dun, yes. In fact, all the NSAIDs can decrease your risk of Alzheimer's. And guess how much they can decrease it? By a full 40%. This is much more than they can decrease your risk for a heart attack. So the NSAIDs are a treat for your heart, for your brain. And this makes sense because, as I taught you in video 264, inflammation is a risk factor for Alzheimer's. And just as anti-inflammatory foods decrease your risk for Alzheimer's, so do anti-inflammatory medications. So ironically, you have two diseases with the same risk factors, heart attack and Alzheimer's. The statins decrease your risk of heart attack, but increase your risk of Alzheimer's, while the NSAIDs decrease your risk of Alzheimer's more than they decrease your risk of heart attack. Do you see why designating the specific disease of concern is so important? This is why I present material in units. It's to keep you from extrapolating what you learn about one disease to another. But it's also to enable you to see themes and similarities from one disease to another. I have given you 20 25 videos on options for preventing Alzheimer's and 17 videos on options for preventing a heart attack. You have a whole smorgasbord. That is what this education is all about. Knowing all your options and tailoring them to your particular situation so that you can choose the ones that are best for you. So last week, I presented all the non-hormonal medication options that are merely a fantasy for treating Alzheimer's. And today, I presented the statins, which are more like a Halloween trick-or-treat phenomenon. You treat your heart while you trick your brain. And you save your heart while you sacrifice your brain. Because the smorgasbord of options is so vast, you do not have to settle for that. And I also presented that NSAIDs, which are a treat for both your heart and your brain. The bottom line is that while heart attack and Alzheimer's do share risk factors, the statins are a beneficial management option for preventing a heart attack, but a detrimental one for preventing Alzheimer's. Instead of preventing Alzheimer's, they cause Alzheimer's. So while you think you're treating both your heart and your brain, what you are really doing is treating your heart and tricking your brain. That is not the kind of trick or treating you want. And the NSAIDs are beneficial for preventing both a heart attack and Alzheimer's. That is the kind of double treat that you want. Okay, that's enough trick-or-treating for today. Next week, I'll discuss something called epigenetics. I've mentioned it before, but that was when you didn't have enough of an education to fully appreciate it. And in the next video, I will tell you just how powerful it is. MenopauseTailor.me is the place to go for scheduling consultations, reading articles, buying webinars, and buying my book. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram are the places to go for stalking me. And this YouTube channel is the place to go or stay to subscribe. See you next week with all treats and no tricks. Bye.